Namaskar and a very warm welcome to another impactful episode, Simply with Suparnaa. Impact leaders are being featured here, essentially the ones that have been acknowledged by the SABERA jury over the past few years. And what we've also noticed is the term social impact capitalism coming to the fore over and over again. And we have a very bright young girl who's going to be sharing this screen, and I'm going to be sharing her journey with you. But before I bring her to your digital screens, I'd like to start by invoking the higher power. Shakti has held me in good stead, and I'll start by reciting the Sanskrit, very old verse of the Saraswati Vandana that talks about dispelling the darkness of ignorance that resides in our hearts through the wisdom of knowledge. Ya kundendu tusharahara dhavala, ya shubhra vastravrita, ya veena varadanda manditakara, ya shweta padamasana, ya brahmachitta shankar prabhutibhi, devai sada vandita, sa mam patu saraswati, bhagavati nishesh, jadyapaha. Without much further ado, but let me first introduce our very bright young SABERA Awardee to you. And I'll start off with the question, what if technology could dissolve barriers to literacy for the visually impaired? Today, we meet the changemaker who turned this vision into reality and right out of college, no less. Thank you, Sanskriti, for taking out the time, for being here with us, and for all that you're doing.
Thanks for having me, Suparnaa. What a pleasure to be here.
So, Sanskriti, first things first, let's establish what exactly is Annie, for which you were awarded the SABERA trophy.
Right. Annie is the world's first Braille learning device. So it helps children, visually impaired children, learn how to read, write, and type in Braille by themselves. It enables self-study through a series of audio-guided tactile lessons and games. And it helps teachers magnify their impact. So it helps improve the teacher-student ratio from 1:1 to 1:n. And in places where students don't have access to teachers, it helps children learn and practice by themselves.
Wow. And how is this different from the traditional way of learning for the visually impaired? How does Annie have an edge over the traditional learning?
So Braille is a tactile language, which means the only way of historically learning it is to have somebody hold your hand and guide your fingertips over the raised dots and teach you over and over again. Literacy anyway is all about repetition and constant repetition till it becomes a part of your unconscious memory. It's the same way that sighted children also learn. Like, we don't magically start knowing how to identify shapes as letters, but with enough practice you stop thinking of, okay, this round shape with a thing at the end, that is an A. You just look at it and you know it's an A, and you know what that means as well. And to get that fluency in place is a laborious process. I mean, all of us spent our kindergarten on it and beyond. So with Braille, what happens is, unless the child has a dedicated Braille tutor who's giving them that level of exposure repeatedly, they are not given that amount of exposure that is necessary to firm up your literacy skills. So even with having cognitive ability, children are left behind because they're not getting the right amount of repetition and practice at the early age. So Annie helps with that, in which Annie is actually the name of the voice tutor. So the lessons begin with, "Hi, I'm Annie, and let's learn Braille together." So Annie helps children learn Braille. Annie is named after Anne Sullivan, Helen Keller's teacher, and she helps children learn Braille, along with having immediate feedback and lessons and games, and it's a gamified content system. So children are able to practice their alphabets and words, and we've also expanded our content to grade 2 Braille. So grade 2 Braille is basically something like shorthand. In grade 1 Braille, one print character maps to one Braille character. But in grade 2 Braille, you have shorthand for common words and contractions like and, for, even knowledge. Knowledge is, contracted into a single character. So you need to be fluent enough in parsing, both in reading and writing. You need to be fluent in parsing that, because all your high school textbooks and any sort of higher education reading material is all in grade 2 Braille. So Annie becomes a child's constant learning companion as they navigate Braille learning. Uh, so one single Braille character fits on your fingertip, and it takes a lot of practice to develop the tactile sensitivity to discern whether some dots are up or down. Like, I have been working in this space for over a decade now, and I can sight read Braille, but I cannot touch read it. Like, if you ask me even today to close my eyes and just read with my fingertips, I would be at a loss, because it takes, you really need to develop that sense over time, of being able to discern the characters. So yeah, it's a lot of practice. And Braille writing is its own thing, where you have to write mirror images of the characters, so that and you have to write it from right to left, so that the sheet can then be turned over and you can read the raised characters from left to right. So children are doing all of this and more, in a very sort of isolated way, because in India you have blind schools, but across the world you have inclusive schools that are coming up. So you'll have one blind child in a class full of sighted children, and it becomes very isolating to them, to have age old teaching methods, like have an old typewriter, or whereas the other children are learning on sophisticated technology. So
Got it. But you know what intrigues me more is that you got this idea, of course, not in a refined form, but at least the intent to be able to make accessibility or education for the visually impaired more accessible, more easy to learn. If I have to say it in a layman's person's way, uh, what was the trigger?
it's something you said right now, actually. Like, what if technology could actually solve a problem? So I'm an engineer, I have an engineer's mindset. And uh, even with, the more you work in the development sector, the social impact sector, it is more than obvious that so many issues are multifaceted. There's no simple solution to any of them. You'll have a bunch of factors that will have to go just right to solve any one problem. Especially in the impact space, there's gender issues, there's economic issues, there's other social issues at play, that all of them sort of come together to create whatever problems we see. But Braille literacy is actually one of those places where I thought, wow, this is where technology can actually solve the problem. Where we actually sat and went through Braille learning ourselves. Like, we went through the lessons ourselves, and like, all of us, when we came out of that room, we realized that, wow, this is something that technology can make better and solve. So it's not, again, Braille literacy is not a one size, no, it's not a one stop solution to all the problems that blind people face, but it is definitely one of the base things that have been shown to have consistent outcomes towards education, employability, and future independence
I think I
for
will
blind.
I will rephrase what you're trying to say, because the fact is that a lot of times what happens is that people with disability are never the focus of attention. So while somebody may have created a braille many years, decades back, but there is no innovation that has happened, and it's almost like, okay, we've created this and this is for the people who are blind, and traditionally the blind people will make candles, so what is it, we've done our duty and that's about it. And that's true for a lot of other disabilities as well. So to actually employ technology so that I mean, considering that we are on a daily basis engaged with technology and our lives are becoming smoother and better and more efficient, why not from an inclusive way? And if I'm correct in my understanding, all of these features, especially on the gadgets like Siri, were originally made with the intent of making the technology inclusive for people who are, say, visually impaired. Is that correct, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's exactly what you said. Like, societal attitudes haven't changed. They're like, oh, this much is enough. Like, this is enough to meet the needs of blind people. We have people who come and say, hey, why do they need to learn how to read and write? They can just use voice software and AI and things like that. But nobody is stopping sending sighted children to school. Like, we also have voice software available, but that doesn't mean we're not teaching children how to read and write, because
Correct.
it's just not seen as an option. Whereas with a lot of people, and I think this reminds me of a lot of ways, women's education was also looked down upon a few centuries ago. Like, people would be, what is the need to learn to read or write? Why do women need to go to school? Or they would just question that belief in and of itself in a way that it would never be questioned for someone more mainstream. So I
Correct.
think, yeah, there are a lot of people that are picking up much more progressive attitudes, especially I think since the Shark Tank episode and since Prathamesh came on TV, we've had so much feedback of people all over the country who said, hey, we never knew that children could learn this much, or they could be so sharp, or whatever. It's a very age old way of typecasting blind people as one or the other category.
So let me throw something more at you, Sanskriti, in the hope that it will find place and germinate at the right time. A seed can be sown. I was at the NCPEDP Design Awards, which is National Council for People with Disabilities, and they actually give out a scholarship on a yearly basis, and design awards. I mean, that is something that was very new to me, and I was amazed as to how indifferent we can be, how individualistic that we can be. I mean, when I buy an appliance for myself, it is an assumption that is for a fully able bodied person. Whereas a simple design intervention of maybe, maybe the features being mentioned in Braille, how it would just be a simple intervention in design as far as any a washing machine or a toaster or a mixer or whatever it is can be, and it can have so much more reach, and not from an inclusive perspective, even from an economic perspective. It's not like people with disabilities don't purchase or do not have the purchasing power. They do, right? They add to the economy. And that's
No,
what I want to also talk about social impact from an economic perspective, and your thoughts on that.
well, yeah, I think one of the things you had asked me earlier is, what got you started on this. There is this report, I think, that was published in 2010 by the Jernigan Institute, National Foundation for the Blind in US, and that says that people who know Braille and are taught Braille at an early age are 70% more likely to have employed have been employed or be independent later on in life. They track the number of students across various decades and everything, and that really stuck with me, because that was like, what is one thing you can do at an early age to really have a lasting impact uh, in the decades to come. And I think one reason why that sort of innovation had not happened earlier is because the incentives weren't aligned much. Like, uh, this space was always looked at from a charity lens, and uh, charity only goes so far. The sustainable growth and capitalism, that is, conscious capitalism, is actually way more powerful than piecemeal interventions. So that was also one thing. I mean, in college when we had the idea, we also had, a choice of whether to make it a non-profit and go from there, or make it a for-profit and go from there. And honestly, like, we wanted it to survive beyond one person or one team's passion. Like, to have a place in the world, it needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be um, it needs to be foundationally sustainable in terms of the economics, in terms of the lasting impact, but also how, what kind of people you can bring to your mission, and a lot of those factors. So that is basically what drove us to make it a for-profit organization. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
glad to see the trend
Impact,
of, yeah.
impact capitalism is becoming, I think, beyond a buzzword. Of course, we keep coming up with new buzzwords every now and then. But I think more and more people that want to be able to do good, but at the same time are conscious of the fact that it cannot be, like you said, from a charity perspective, it needs to be self sustainable, and creating a market for that, for doing good and making money, cannot be two mutually exclusive things. They can very much align with each other and create a sustainable platform. Is that what Thinkerbells is also? Is it a sustainable platform? Is it making money?
Yes, to answer your question, yes, we are making money. We're clocking around 10 crores a year now, with from a product line that didn't exist when we started out. And I think this is just the beginning. We can grow so much more. So we are also raising our next round to scale up Annie and expand into our own braille cell technology and our own refreshable braille displays for older students. So I think it's a bit of both. I mean, you can achieve sustainability, and then, but at that, you kind of remain at that scale, or sort of growing very gradually, to actually achieve growth at scale, or something that is uh, explosive. You do need to inject funding from time to time, but that is the way most capitalistic enterprises go anyway. Like, you'll reach some sort of sustained plateau, and then, to scale up, you need to infuse more. So that's the way
So
it goes with us as well.
Annie was recognized for what it does and creating a kind of a revolution in the space 2 years back by the SABERA jury. Now, where has Thinkerbells reached from then on to now?
So we are currently, servicing customers in India and in 8 other countries, and we are also, like I said, expanding into the core Braille cell technology. So Annie was a Braille learning device, and we focused a lot on getting the educational content and the learning experience of the students and teachers right. And with that, we want to sort of expand into K-12 education beyond just literacy and numeracy. So we've developed our own Braille cell technology for that, and we'll be building devices to support older students as well along this journey.
Super. And what is your vision for the future now, Sanskriti, with a bright? I remember when you were awarded, and you were awarded in the promising leader category, and you came up to say, I am not a young person anymore. And you were all of 29 at that point in time. You have, and I say that and I maintain it again. You're a bright, young, citizen of the country with a heart in the right place, education and technology, and actually marrying the two, impact and technology, and creating a sustainable platform. So, what's the future now for Thinkerbells?
Our future is to be the largest e-learning company for the visually impaired. We were earlier focused on literacy. We want to expand our reach to all of learning, and create a new, digital learning experience that becomes the status quo worldwide.
And who are the end? Of course, the end users are people with disability, especially the visually impaired people. But who are your clients, the intermediary at this point in time? Or is it a direct to C, or is a how does your business operate?
So our clients are people who invest in education for visually impaired. So they could be government authorities, they could be CSR. And internationally, we work with distributors, but even everywhere, it is ultimately an education play. So whoever is funding the education, those are our clients.
Super. And what was your experience with SABERA, Sanskriti? As a parting note, I'd like to wrap up on that.
It's been great, honestly. Like when I first applied, I really did not think it would go through. And especially, I remember sitting in the auditorium looking at all the other awardees and thinking, wow, these organizations are doing such amazing work, and feeling a bit like a minnow or misplaced in that crowd. But I'm really grateful to be a part of the cohort and have ongoing support from you, Suparna, and the rest of the SABERA team.
Thank you, Sanskriti. We do look forward to seeing more of your innovations, even on the SABERA platform, hoping to connect you with the right kind of people who may support you on your journey onwards. Are you, though, open to collaborations? That's something that I've, kind of missed asking you.
Yes, we're definitely open to collaborations. We have a separate section on our website for people looking to, deploy CSR projects in India. And additionally, if you know someone who's looking to invest in inclusive education or accessibility and edtech, you can put them in touch with me.
Accessibility and edtech, anybody who is in the CSR space, in the education space, looking at a very progressive, inclusive platform, then Thinkerbell Labs it is. Thank you so much, Sanskriti, for doing this. I'm hoping, like I said, that we recognize more of your innovations through technology for good. All the best and keep doing good.
Thank you. Thank you, Suparna.